All right, I think we should go ahead and get started. We might have one or two more join us. The only other person I was expecting was Fran, so hopefully she'll join us soon. So before we carry on to any other business, did everyone have an opportunity to look at the minutes from November 15th? Okay. And if there are no corrections or comments, could I have a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve.
All right, waiting, and we'll give the second to Kristen. No comments? Any comments? Nope. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, so first thing is I'm just going to go through a little bit of what I've been up to lately. The new homeowner mailings, there were 5 new homes in November. So starting to trend down, which we have been aware of. The winter tree lights finished up. Thanks so much to the many generous businesses and individuals who donated to that project. Hopefully you've all had a chance to come through the Depot or the Green or New Preston in the evening. We, in the end, added 7 new trees to the original 4, depending on how you count the fact that the town hall tree got cut down and we had to put lights in a new tree. So that was existing, that disappeared. Anyway, the feedback has been really positive. The businesses all appreciate it. And I've actually had phone calls and emails from other towns asking how that project was put together and how it was funded and organized. And an interior designer who lives in somewhere over in New York, who was driving through and wanted to know where the supplier. So we've had a lot of really great feedback. So that was a project that I worked on with the WBA and has really made the Depot sort of a destination. And hopefully you all, I did not put Holiday in the Depot on my report. I was hoping Fran would be here from the WBA to talk about that, but hopefully you all made it down to Holiday in the Depot. It was a spectacular evening. And just as many people as I've ever seen at a Holiday in the Depot, and probably more because I felt like they were more spread out. I made it all the way down to the pantry and it was crowded down there too. So the Depot was flooded. So that was wonderful. The newsletter just continues on. Hopefully everyone received one the first week of December. If you do not, please let me know because I try to pop into the post office and just let them know that we're watching. We send them enough to give one to make sure every mailbox gets one, but every now and then they miss a route and I don't know why. So I just like to let them know we're keeping an eye on that. And the printer that we work with is also wonderful. Nancy goes in and speaks with them and lets them know if we've heard that anybody didn't receive one. The next newsletter will go out the first weekend of March. I have to put the schedule together for due dates and publications, but we're following the same print schedule. So keep that in mind. I think that's it for the newsletter. Community Center Programming Committee. I report on occasion about the programming committee that has met. Over the summer, we did tours of other senior and community centers and wrote up notes about things that we liked, things that we didn't, asked them what they wished they could change or add. So we're going to put together a final report on that. But it was also the programming committee, along with the student that I was working with, that put together the survey that went to the town in October. And we had I think 211, a little over 200 responses to that survey. I was hoping we would get a few more, but that's not a bad sampling size for this size community. And I have published the results of that survey on the Economic Development webpage. I'm still kind of going through their lessons to be learned, some really interesting things. I love having open-ended questions because it gives people the opportunity to share some things that we had missed. So that was really, really great. Actually, I'm gonna really quick, because I see Fran logging in. I'm gonna share my screen because I did pull up a few things to be ready to share with you. So this is the town website. Hopefully you can all see that. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
So on the Economic Development Committee page, there is a tab here called Community Center. If you go to that tab, everything that we've done so far, or all the big stuff is here. And the last thing is the survey results. And so I just wanted to show you where they were. And this was the report that the student and so Katie Moulton and I put together. Talks about how we collected the data, the methods, and the results, and then some summary data, which I thought was really, there were a few things from there that I was a little bit surprised on. And I just want to touch on two things, and then someday we can come back and do a sort of a deeper dive on this. But if you look at the things that people felt would be the most important for the community center to have, we have the highest bar here is, wait, let me move this viewing box for those of us in here. The highest bar were adult and senior specific activities, which is pretty broad in general, but that makes sense. But then if you look at the next highest type things, health, fitness, and continued learning seem to be some of the higher things that people felt were needed. And interestingly enough, if you scroll down, there were some questions about factors on their ability to use the community center. Community reported the following factors of the greatest impact. Anyway, I wanted to come down to here. So we asked people, what town resources do they use the most? And if you look at what they use, they're out in Steep Rock, they're at the Riverwalk Pavilion, they're outside at Lake Warmog and the Chippewa River and the Riverwalk Pathway. Those are all spaces that people say they use once to twice a week. Interestingly enough, too, it's not the senior center. So, you know, clearly we knew that there's some work that needs to be done and some improvements that need to be made. But the emphasis on fitness and outdoor facilities, so that, you know, the walking trail and the fitness components actually seem to ring true to the way people are currently spending their time. So I thought that was interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so take your time to go through. There's some analysis and some a little bit of some of the Katie did a great job of looking at the open-ended questions and pulling, sort of doing some tallies and commenting on the things that we heard the most. And then at the end are the actual questions so that you can see what the actual survey looked like. So we can spend some more time on that in the future. I just wanted you to know it's there and give you a chance to read it, and then we can actually have a discussion about that at some point.
Great. And one quick question.
Sure.
How many responses?
I think 211.
It might have said 215.
Well, it's weird. So I think there were 215, and then there were 4 that said they either weren't residents or they weren't 18 years old, something. So
Okay.
she kicked them out. What is interesting though, is I did have some paper versions that were at the senior center that did not get inputted in time. We needed to close this out for some due dates for my students. So we can always revisit the paper versions again, but yeah, so it's not as large as the previous one where we had 300 and something respondents, but it's not a bad, when I was looking at statistically relevant numbers for
Well, it's an okay
a
sample
study.
size.
Yeah, it's not bad for a
It's an
town
okay
of
sample
35
size. Yeah.
under. it's not the 10%, which is sort of like which we would love to get to, but
Yeah, but if you get over, as long as you
Might
get
be
over
10%
5,
of
you can.
households.
it could be 10% of households. This is true. What are there, 2,400 housing units? Although that's units, not households. Those are guest houses and accessories too,
Right,
right?
yes.
So,
Yeah, so I think it's definitely statistically relevant.
Yeah.
And there was some great information gleaned from it. So we can spend some more time on that when we're talking about. Great. Any other questions about that? Or I continue on? All right, the Welcome Center is continuing to move along. The new signs went up. Hopefully you all have had a chance to see them. The new Legion sign on the building they had done, and the identity sign, the in the ground sign that declares that it is the Senior Center, Parks and Rec, and Welcome Center with the hours on it. So that's right at the end of the plaza. Hopefully you've had a chance to see it. Also this month, I've had 2 meetings with the Gun Memorial Museum staff who are new to Washington, and I met with Sandor Max in the space to take measurements. So the displays for the walls are in the works. And I have a newfound appreciation for people who do museum displays. Doing the research, getting copyright permission, writing the blurbs, figuring out, trying to be equitable, all of that is a lot of work. But I have to say, so Amy is the new curator at the museum, and Corinne is the new collections manager, and they've enjoyed working on this project because it is about the depot and about our veterans. Those are the 2 topics that we talked about. And so it's giving them a reason to sort of dive into the archives and see what's there and learn about the community. They did a site visit with me, and just, we're really interested in seeing the depot and really trying to imagine where the railroad went. So Sandor Max is going to get started, hopefully the map wall, where we're going to have the map and the Welcome to Washington and the QR code. That should go up first because we're not waiting on any copyright stuff for that. The other 2 sections, one section is going to be about the railroad in the depot, since the Legion Hall is the original train. Well, the original burnt down. This is the second one, but it is the train station building that was moved to that location. It used to sit where the post office is.
Right.
It took me a while to figure that out. So
That's why the mural is in the old bank.
yeah. So I found some great pictures that really kind of show where everything was in the Bill Bader book. And apparently those photos are all in a box somewhere at the museum, and they're looking for them. The museum has some depot pictures, but they're hard to see the tracks, or you can't see the station in them. So I'm really trying to tell the story of that building in the depot. So we're working on that.
Yeah, so the good news is that the stuff's in a box somewhere. The bad news is it's in a box somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. They went through one remote storage place and they didn't see it there, so they're going to go to the other. And they had not seen that book before, and it is really a fun walk through the historic depot and then the depot during the flood. So
my backyard's in that book.
Yeah, my house is in that book.
Yeah, so am I. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's been great. I've been learning a lot. They've been learning a lot, but it's slow.
Yeah,
It's
there's
time consuming.
that great shot of the hay wagon and the plow horse and the kid and the guys and the old, there's a great shot of them like haying a field,
Okay.
whatever, and it's like there's an old plow horse there. You've seen the photo. That's my backyard.
Oh, that is really cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, what is amazing to me, and it just took me the longest time to really wrap my head around this, but the tracks ran right down the middle of what is now the plaza.
Yes.
So that if you stand where Legion Hall is, the front and in these depot photos from around 1908, the Washington Food Market building is there in its form. I mean, the front part has changed because the front door used to be on the other side. But tracks run right there in the straight line next to the supply. And the supply building that behind the two-story building that of the front part is also still there. And so it's not very wide. It really goes track to track. It's all no building. So they shut out and then they went through the other way. To River Road, through the tunnel, back towards Milford, Danbury. And then they went to Romford. The new testing station is actually on 47 on Beadbrook, which we would, I don't know, maybe not quite as far up as the fire. And then at some point they head towards Romford.
Hey, Michelle,
Yeah.
excuse me, there was a loud noise and all of a sudden your voice or your microphone is very muted or muffled. Anybody
is?
else?
Hear you well either.
Are we all that way? So it's.
Do you
No.
hear me?
We got you back now.
Okay, it's fine.
Okay, that's weird. Nothing happened in here.
No,
Okay, thanks, Jim. Anyway, we were just kind of talking about the railroad and the depot, but if anybody has questions about the Welcome Center, please let me know. Hopefully, in the next month or two, we'll see the displays going up on the walls. All right,
nice.
great. All right, next, I want to talk a little bit about the Arts Council. So, and I will share my screen again. I've got the mission statement there. So, as you remember, we talked at the at an EDC meeting several months back about trying again to start the Arts Council. We read in the newspaper that Southbury had gotten one started as a subcommittee of the EDC, and we thought we would try it again. And the meeting that we had last month was immediately after the EDC, so I wasn't able to report yet. And I'm happy to report that we had a really nice turnout. And Steph Burr, who is the director of the Northwest Arts Council, also attended that meeting and gave us some great background information and guidance about why it's important to have an arts council, which I also wanted to just back up and say, because I did a little research, the supporting the arts and cultural institutions is in the 2014 POCD in the economic development chapter. And starting an arts council was in our EDC goals and plans for 22-23. So this is something that we've been long talking about and is supported by these plans that we've done. So this was the mission statement that was previously agreed on by this group of people who came together. And Jay Hubblebank actually really wanted me to make sure to share it with the EDC, because as this council is forming, he wants to make sure that their mission is clear and that they don't have the opportunity to go rogue, I guess. So he was really encouraged to hear that they had already worked on a mission statement that in general, everyone sort of signed off on. At the last meeting, some felt that we could probably make it shorter, that it was a little too long, but that's okay. We can work on that. Yeah. I also wanted to share with you what was shared with us from the Arts Council. Because one of their missions is to help towns start arts councils. And one of the main drivers behind that is there apparently was a fair amount of state money that was left on the table by communities that did not have an arts council. I think it was ARPA money, but it was directed towards municipal arts use in order to apply for it. So the Northwest Arts Council represents, I forget how many towns up in the Northwest, and really can't be the driver for each of those communities. So they're hoping to help get arts councils started in each of the communities so that they can then work with these councils. So, so they put together this document to talk about why an arts council is important and to talk about the resources that they can help with. At that meeting, staff brought some sample bylaws, which will be on the very first agenda of the next meeting. And here she talks a little bit about just their mission and how that arts councils can work within this regional structure. So I'm happy to report we've already had 7 people come forward and write their letters of intent to serve on this council to the selectmen. When we get back after the holidays, I'm going to send out one last email reminder. I'm also going to put a call for members in the selectmen's email in case we've missed anyone. And so this council will be appointed by the selectmen and will meet sometime probably towards the end of January on their first meeting to put together some bylaws and a meeting schedule and elect a chair and kind of figure out how exactly they want to move forward. So it was a very productive meeting and I'm thrilled because we tried it the year before and I got a lot of people to come, but nobody really felt they wanted to step forward and volunteer. So it was just kind of a nice idea.
No blood oaths.
Yeah, but it seems to have some legs now. So I'm excited by that and we'll keep you posted on that as it moves forward. So my intention with that arts council is to serve as a facilitator, as I do here, record the meetings, get the minutes and the agendas out. It is interesting though, one of the things that we talked about was establishing a cultural district, which is a new designation that the state has put forward. Only 2 communities, I think, have done this so far, Ridgefield and Torrington. There is really no significant incentive to do this yet, but staff feels that this is the directions when the state is looking to fund or to put money towards arts programs and initiatives, that they're going to favor these cultural districts.
Torrington's had one for a while, haven't they? I mean,
Well, they've had probably informal, but this is actually a state statute. I actually brought that information with me as well. State statute that was passed in effective October 1, 2019. Ridgefield was the first one, and it was a big thing in the paper maybe 2 years ago, and staff helped with the Torrington one. I feel like they just got theirs established maybe last year. So maybe they had an informal cultural district,
Does it have to be close in geographic proximity?
yeah.
I'm
So-
probably confusing it with the Arts Council.
Hmm?
Which, I'm probably confusing that with the Northwest Arts.
Maybe
Council,
with their arts.
because
council.
they've been around for a while.
Oh, yeah, they've been
They've-
around for a long time.
Yeah, they've hit me up on more than one.
They do some really wonderful work. Anyway, one of the requirements for the cultural district is that you create a board or commission or a committee to oversee it. And what Steph encouraged is that the oversight committee be the arts council. And so there are some certain, some criteria of membership that we wanted to make sure we check all the boxes. We need to make sure that we're representing at least one arts organization, that we have at least one local artist, and at least one business owner or somebody from the chamber, or for us, that would be the WBA. So, so we want to make sure that we check all those boxes so that if we choose to move forward with that, we'll already have that council in place. It seems crazy to create another body when finding volunteers is so challenging. One thing that was interesting though, and I'm not sure how to check this box. Where was it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that would be all cultural, artist, organization, nonprofit. Okay, so anyway, I'll keep you posted. I'll keep you posted on that development. I think the work of the council, though, will be very. I mean, there may be some topics that they dive deeper into than we have as an EDC, but the promotions that we do through Explore and with the arts postcard that we've done the last 2 summers, I mean, there's just a lot of similar goal, overlap.
Synergy.
Thank you. I was like, what is that? Yes, a lot of synergy, which is why having it be a subcommittee of the EDC makes sense. All right, any questions about the Arts Council? No? All right, great. So just a quick report, I've attended a couple of conferences since we last met. I've gone to I went to a meeting of the Western CT Tourism Board, which is part of the CT visit. Kind of interesting, they're sort of getting their feet back under them. They had a complete overhaul of their leadership. Interestingly enough, one of their leaders, like vice president or something, is a man named Lorenzo Gaudioso, who is from Roxbury. So I reached out to him and then had a meeting with him after. It's a guy in Roxbury, they're so small, but he just jumped right in. He's pretty into it. There are a couple of things on the horizon. They're working on an app that businesses can participate in. So I'll kind of keep everyone posted on that. Julia and the Sandor Max team already are really great about pushing all of our stuff to CT Visit, which is the state tourism website. And if at any point in time you go there, you will find pictures of Washington. They have destination places like amusement parks or whatever, and they have the town of Washington as a destination. Is pretty funny. And it brings you right to the Explore site. So we're already pretty much utilizing all the avenues that are available to us, but I still found it interesting to just see what they're working on for the future for tourism. So I'll keep you posted. The Economic Development Summit for the state, which was hosted by the commissioner and the governor and a whole bunch of other people, that was mid-November, maybe. It was at the business school at Yale in this new building that is just stunning. It's unbelievable. I actually took one of the breaks to walk around. It's glass all around the outside, and it's 3 stories high. So I walked up to the top and we just have these beautiful views. Really remarkable. And it was in a very interesting summit. I think I would just summarize saying that the real focus was workforce development and trying to reach out to potential workers in new ways, because everybody is looking for employees. There was actually a woman there who spoke about placing people who've been incarcerated. There were people that from our community colleges there. So just a lot of talking about workforce development. The other thing I thought was really interesting, it was the partnership that the state has with Advanced CT. And if you've never gone to their website, it's interesting. I go to it all the time because all of the town profiles are there. So if you're wondering, well, does Warren have more or less people than us? And yeah, I go when we're talking about mostly population statistics. Are we older as a percentage of our population than the rest of the Northwest corner? The answer is yes. And older than the state, yes. So lots of great information, but they're also have been hired by the state to be sort of our data house for promoting Connecticut, basically. And the president of Advanced CT, as well as the governor, really talked about sort of the myths that are out there about Connecticut, about it not being business friendly, about it being too expensive to live here. And when you dig into the numbers, those aren't really true. So they're really working on changing that narrative and some of those myths. And you can go on and look at a lot of the statistics they have, and they've done them in these really interesting infographic type things. You know, they're saying we're a great place to open companies because we have the 3rd highest educated workforce in the country. And our schools are ranked #2 in the country. And I think they're #1 in college prep students. There's just a bunch of statistics on workforce, and then some others where when it came to business friendly and they looked at taxes and things, we were like 9 in the country. So not everybody seems to think that we're very not business friendly. So I find that interesting.
It all depends on how it depends on how you couch the numbers. It's like, they always, critics will always say like, Connecticut, people in Connecticut pay, have the highest taxes. It's like, it's true and it's not true. The tax rates aren't that high. The trouble is that Connecticut has the highest median income. So people who make more money pay more taxes. So if you just say, oh, Connecticut people are taxed more, well, yeah, they're taxed more because they make more.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
so,
You only pay more if you make more.
yeah, I mean, the
Yeah,
least tax
or-
state is Mississippi, because they have the lowest median income in the country. It's like, so. Okay, well, strictly speaking, if all you cared about was low taxes, you'd all move to Mississippi, but I don't see that happening.
Right.
So, there you go.
Right. So it's interesting. You're right. The numbers, you can.
You can couch them any way you
couch
want.
them however you want, but what they're trying to do is change the narrative
Yeah.
and some of these myths, or just presenting alternate.
Yeah, are they still, the advanced CT people, are they still getting their data from the Connecticut State Data Center? Is that who's? Or is it the group in New Haven that's giving them their? stuff?
That I'm not sure. Yeah, because it's changed, one of them changed names. and
Yeah,
they
that's
changed
the Connecticut State.
affiliation.
Yeah, because it used to be the Yukon Data Center, now they're the
Right.
Connecticut State Data Center, the same people,
Yeah,
because it got started at Yukon, but
Right.
they're the best. I mean, and as somebody who looks at this stuff,
and I
They-
think that's them, because Advanced
Yeah.
CT now houses all the town profiles. But the
Yeah.
data, that other one that's in New Haven,
yeah,
does some other report, there's an equity profile. that they
Yeah,
produced
they're-
That was interesting.
they do things the other one does that the Connecticut State Data Center doesn't do,
Right,
but the one in New Haven, I can't remember their name, but they tend to do a lot of their data mining is really like social justice sort of
yeah,
whatever. Whereas if you're really just you want to look at cold hard numbers, the one in Hartford, the Connecticut State Data Center, they're really the best.
yeah.
So,
Well, and there's another one out there that does the housing profiles. That is not either of them, I think.
Hmm. Okay.
And I forget the name of that company, but yeah, lots of,
Mhm.
which is great. It's nice to have different sources for data so you can compare and.
yeah, because as you're learning now, the Census Bureau stuff is worthless now.
Yeah,
It's, you're better off not even looking at it. So,
it's true. And it was interesting. Let me try to update in the middle of the meeting.
Mhm.
I ran into that with the student I was working with, as she was working on this equity profile, and she really dove into this census data noise and just realized that this was not data she could use.
yeah, it's
but
pretty much worthless.
it gave a little bit of an explanation about it, so that was,
Yeah, it's gonna make the data portion of the P O C D tough, because we used to rely on the census info, ACS, whatever, and it's like, and we're not gonna be able to do that this time, so we're
Yeah.
gonna be mining information down the hall and downstairs, like. Well, we'll hit the Connecticut Data Center, because they do their own work. So their stuff's pretty good, so.
that's good.
But yeah, it's going to be hard to do apples to apples, because typically in plans, you look at the last census and the census before, but we're not gonna. We're not gonna be able to really, it's not gonna really tell us anything,
No,
so.
yeah, it's a challenge. Data, lots of data, inaccurate data. We're starting to do that up.
Yeah, so Mark Twain said, that there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. Yeah. It's like-
Yeah, something like that. I remember that. All right, the other conference that I went to was the COST conference, which is the Council of Small Towns, and it was their Planning and Economic Development Conference, which was also really interesting. I learned there's transportation grant information out there. that I want to look into, especially safe streets and roads for all, which talked about pedestrians, and that Titus plan that we worked on last year. Hopefully there will be some grant opportunities to apply for the sidewalks and the parking in that block. So that was great. It was just one of those things where I ended up sitting with the executive director of Connecticut Main Street, which she's a lovely woman, and we had conversations between the sessions about what we're doing and working on. So that was a nice connection. There were also some interesting presentations about economic development strategies that are not the kinds of things that we've done here before with tax incentives, but just learning about how they structure some of these investments, sort of pre-development investments. So and you can apply that also possibly to housing. You know, if somebody is going in to develop something that might be mixed use, not that we have many parcels left for that, but they have this way of, it's almost like deferred taxes, because if you go in with the infrastructure and you invest in the property, you increase its value before you've actually done anything. So we're talking septic, electric, water, that kind of stuff.
Driveways.
Before you have anything. So they have these mechanisms for either deferring that until those increased assessments until the properties have sold and development has happened, so that the developer themselves aren't out all this money. Some interesting things.
So they don't defer, they don't defer the taxes, they defer the assessment itself.
Correct. Yes, that portion. So they continue to pay because as soon as you start developing it, its value increases.
Right.
And if it's a large enough parcel, I mean, these were large communities building big warehouses off of 84 and made a huge difference. But as we all know, these projects can take 10 years to come to fruition sometimes. And if you're making improvements during that time, but you're not able to recover any income yet. It's just there were several different strategies that just got me to thinking, could we apply something like that either to affordable home development or mixed use development, or some other way to sort of incentivize a developer who, you know, because it's cost prohibitive right now. So some interesting ideas. The last little bit I wanted to talk about was the photo contest that we ran. It was hugely successful. We had 68 photos submitted, some of which are going to be absolutely perfect. The people at Sandor Max were so thrilled. We're going to have stuff because, you know, we won't be able to use those fall photos until next year, but it's going to be summertime when CT Visit and all the tourism places are looking for articles about what to do in the fall. And so now we have a library of pictures that we can use, and some of them are really wonderful. So that went well. We have gift certificates from some of the local businesses, the Hickory Stick Pantry, 5 Janes, Marty's, and the Food Market all donated gift certificates so we could give some prizes. And we're going to run the contest 4 times this year, each season, and then do a photo. We're going to develop some and have an art show of sorts here at Town Hall at the end. So it's great. Yeah. I think that's it. Does anyone have questions on anything?
Jim has a hand up.
Oh, no, that's my cursor.
Oh, sorry.
It's funny, the cursor turns on the end.
That's a flaw in the program. Yeah.
It is a flaw in the program. All right. No questions or comments, then we'll move on to our new business. We'll update on broadband from Wayne because things have been happening.
Yeah, well, this is actually 2 updates. So let me get the more boring one out of the way first. I'll give you a brief update on state and federal stuff, and anybody who wants more details, you can just email me. You know, on the outside, and I can make your eyes glaze over if you want. So, but basically there are, you may have read or seen whatever that that the Connecticut got a small grant from the feds for like $5 million or whatever to craft a plan for a statewide broadband strategy. That's normal. The state is going to get about $100 million from the feds as part of the Infrastructure Act. But before the feds will give us the money, we have to show them that we have a plan of how we're going to spend it. So that's what that little grant was for. So to craft a plan so we can get the dough. That infrastructure money, the soonest the state would actually see it is 2024, most likely 2025. So it's going to be down the road. It can be used for broadband infrastructure. It can also be used to make broadband more affordable. I'm not going to get into the weeds too much on that, but I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of that $100 million here. So don't get too excited. There is also another pot of money, so to speak, of about 43 million or so. That's actually in Hartford now. That's actually part of ARPA. That also can be dedicated to broadband projects. A little bit of it that has been spent locally, which I'm going to talk about in my second part. Like I said, this money is pretty much available now, but it's a little trickier to get because this money, in order for a town to get the money, they have to partner with a provider. And there has to be a 25% buy-in on the part of the municipality. And so it makes it a little trickier to kind of gain access to that money. The 100 million I spoke about before doesn't have any such constraint, although of course they would love to see public-private partnerships, but it's not necessarily a requirement. The money that's sitting there now, it pretty much is a requirement. You can't, in other words, we couldn't apply for that 43 million. We couldn't apply as a town to put up our own fiber as a municipal network by ourselves. We would, in order to even apply, you would have to have a willing provider who would partner with us. So, so that's basically where we are at the state and federal level. There is going to be some money available. If you're thinking about, that's a lot of money, there's no way that $143 million would come close to providing everyone in the state with fiber. It's a drop in the bucket, but it would make things better. Now on the local level, which there have been some movements lately in several of the towns. Let me start with the town that actually had something happen first, which is the town of Sharon. Sharon is a bit unique compared to our town. They actually don't have full coverage with their cable company. They have Comcast, and 1 out of 7 homes in Sharon doesn't even have cable. They have many roads in their towns where the cable doesn't run down the road, and Comcast has no business interest in ever stringing cable there because there aren't enough people. It's just too much money, not worth the investment. With this 43 million that I spoke about earlier, which is why I spoke about it earlier, Comcast approached the town of Sharon and said, hey, if you're willing to partner with us, we will work out a public-private deal to string cable on front of those 250 homes in your town that don't have cable. So they worked out a deal where the town would fork over $1.6 million, which was their share, and Comcast would cover the rest. And then they would basically get their town to essentially 100% cable coverage, which is what we enjoy right now with Spectrum, basically. So in other words, it would get the town of Sharon to basically 2005. They took it to a town meeting and it passed. I think it was kind of a poor decision, but I won't get into that, what I feel about it. But the interesting part about it is that at the 11th hour, Frontier stepped in and said, oh, by the way, we were planning on stringing fiber through parts of Sharon. And if you want to spend $3.2 million, we'll string fiber through the entire town of Sharon. Of course, part of this was, I'm sure, well, we're going to come in here because we don't want to be one-upped. I think most things with Frontier, they were a half hour late and a half buck short, and I think it was an intriguing offer. It certainly was a better deal. I mean, if you're willing to spend $1.6 million to string cable and in front of 250 homes, why wouldn't you be willing to spend $3 million to string fiber in front of your whole damn town?
Right.
I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. It's like, but I think, town meetings are funny things. And, you call a town meeting to vote on something like this, and I bet all 250 homes who didn't have anything showed up at that town meeting and said, yeah, let's vote yes, because they want something and they want it now. And that's kind of how those things work. And it's going to be a tough deal for Sharon, because I don't think there's any way they could get fiber now. I mean, how could you go to the town at this point and ask for money to do that when you've already spent money? And
Not for a good long time.
and so it's, it wouldn't have been the decision I made, but that's what happened. But meanwhile, in several of the other towns in our neck of the woods, Frontier has also come through. And in a few towns, they've just come and said, we're coming in and we're stringing fiber. And they're not asking for money. They're just doing it.
Wow.
Winstead is getting fibered up right now, including Winchester, not just the central Winstead.
Wow.
Winstead is part of the town of Winchester. I don't know if y'all are aware of that. It's kind of like the depot is part of the town of Washington.
Yeah.
It's like, but they're going to do they're doing Winstead, they're doing Barkhamsted, which was a little interesting. They might be doing New Hartford as well. And again, I spoke with Don Stein, who's the first selectman of Barkhamsted. He said that it's really kind of neat news for them, but he said, but he couldn't really take credit for it because he wasn't lobbying Frontier at all. They just came forward and said, we're going to do it. And there's no cost to the town. Now, Frontier is not going to, I think in Barkhamsted's case, they're not going to do every single road. They're going to do about 70% of the town. In Winstead, I think they're doing the whole smash. I've also heard that they may be thinking about doing it in New Hartford and Norfolk.
I've heard about Norfolk.
Yeah, well, Norfolk and New Hartford is maybe getting the same deal as Barkhamsted and Winstead, where there's no municipal contribution. Frontier's just decided to do it. Now, in Norfolk and in Falls Village, I haven't spoke to the folks in Norfolk, but I spoke to Henry Todd in Falls Village. They are proposing this model like they proposed in Sharon, where they were going to they're going to do, they were going to do like 60 or 70% of the town. And if Falls Village wants them to do the entire town, then they want Falls Village to kick in, I think, like $800,000, like $790,000, whatever. And in which case they would string fiber on all the roads. And they're having discussions in that in Falls Village. Henry had one kind of informational meeting with townsfolk, and it kind of went as she kind of would think something like that would go. There were some people who were like, why would we spend a nickel? And there were other people who thought it was great. And so who knows where that's going to go. I think there's a similar situation happening in Norfolk, although I don't have a dollar amount yet. I did see the presentation that Frontier gave to Sharon, and it was actually pretty good. Frontier is all in on fiber. They're not even doing phone lines anymore. They won't string copper phone lines anymore. They're only stringing fiber. I don't know if they think they're going to be getting any of this government funding or not, but
That was gonna be my question, because how does that, if Frontier's paying a portion and the town is paying a portion, where's all this state, these millions of dollars, why can't they be paying a
well,
portion?
one is speed. I mean, Frontier is doing this right now. I mean, they went to Winstead. Winstead's going to be wired by March.
Wow.
Yeah, they're going, I mean, when Frontier says they're going to do it, they're not saying, oh, we're going to do it 2 years from now. They're like, oh, in 3 months, we're going to have you wired. And if you think about it, they're the only people who can do it. that way, because one, well, most importantly, Frontier's already on all the poles. They have the old fashioned landline, which, or what, you know, in the industry, they call it the POTS line. POTS, plain old telephone service.
Plain old telephone.
Yeah, the acronym is POTS. And if you look on any pole, it's typically the bottommost wire on the pole is the old fashioned copper telephone line. Plus they co-own the poles with Eversource. So Frontier doesn't have to pay rent because they'd be paying themselves. They don't need an extra space on the pole because they're simply lashing the fiber onto the existing line. So they don't have any make-ready expenses. They don't have to move anybody out of the way, or because again, they're using a space they already occupy. And they have the crews, they have the expertise. They can string fiber cheaper and easier and faster than anyone.
So Wayne, do you think it would make any sense to reach out to Frontier?
Already on.
Okay.
I've tried, I have 2 contacts at Frontier now. I have not heard back yet. They're ghosting me. Jim, if you're listening, I may reach out to you. I'm thinking perhaps they need to hear from a first selectman before they would actually return my call or my email. You know, I think I'm being ghosted. I mean, I told them who I was, and I'm chair of planning, and I chaired Northwest Connect for 5 years and whatever, but I'm still not getting any, you know.
I actually spoke to them yesterday, Wayne. I got a letter across my desk that was more a matter of housekeeping relative to needing approval as an abutting property owner, but they are coming to Washington and stringing fiber. And they're starting, I'm going to forward you, I'll scan and forward you. I got it as a hard copy letter. And when I called the representative, there was they weren't doing the entire town, but they're doing quite a bit of it. But I'll forward you what I received in the mail last night. And
do you remember who was it from? Was it from Allison Ellis, or was it from I can't remember the guy's name.
No, it was a lady at Frontier, Wayne, that I spoke with.
Okay, because it might be the same lady who I've been reaching out to, but that's have they given you any inclination as to, I mean, I'm assuming they're doing the main drags. They're going to do all the state roads because that's where it started.
Yeah, I've got to get in a call back with a different representative because she didn't want to give out misinformation. You know,
sure.
she didn't have specifics, but in a representative call back, I'm going to get more specifics as to the number of households, the streets, and that kind of thing. And I'll tie you into all that, Wayne, for sure.
Sure. And so like, you know, Frontier is doing this. They have decided,
Amazing.
well, again, it's like if Jim has it right. It's like if they come in and say, well, we're going to come in and we're going to do this, and if they do all the main drags and they do most of the depot and New Preston and Marble, you know, the village center areas and whatever, that could be pretty good. You know, I think it's highly unlikely they would come into a town like Washington and say, well, we're going to string fiber on all the roads. One, there's 114 road miles in Washington. It's not cost effective. Then, you know, so there are going to be, you know, of the 114 miles of roads we have here, they're going to do X.
Right.
Okay. The question is, what about Y? And if we want the other ones, how much?
Right.
Now, the other advantage that Frontier has over the others that, like I said, Frontier can string fiber cheaper than anyone else, but they also have like a cap, a limit of how much per home pass that they're willing to spend. And I know that that's roughly $1,000. So, you know, we have roughly, you know, 2,000 plus homes in Washington. You know, and realistically, as an aggregate, it probably costs, to do the entire town would probably cost roughly $3,000 per home passed. But some homes would cost only 1,000 or less, like yours and mine would be really cheap to pass. Some way out and, you know, in some of these real backcountry roads would be a lot of money per home, and they probably will pass on those. Unless somebody's willing to
So
pony up.
out of curiosity, well, I think this is great news because it's progress, right? We've been trying to figure out how to move any of this forward.
Mhm.
And I feel like it might make sense to just let them do their thing on as many, whatever percentage of the roads they will do and learn from it. And see how many people then go ahead to the next step and pay the money to have it brought to their house and see what the uptake.
Well,
rate is on that.
they will do it. I mean, I can tell you how, I know how these companies operate like that. They're going to take a look at the town. And first of all, they're gonna do the major arteries because that's a no-brainer because they probably already have fiber there anyway. And they're going to look at the areas basically like around the village centers because they can pass the most homes with the least amount of fiber. They don't need every single household to sign up. In fact, what's called the take rate.
Yeah,
Okay, usually these companies, if they can get a 40% take rate, they're okay. Then that's worth the infrastructure investment for them.
right.
So, if there's a loser in this, that's obviously Spectrum. So if you live, if you're on one of these roads in Washington that's gonna be getting fiber, one of the easiest way you're gonna be getting fiber is you're gonna be getting a notice from Spectrum pretty soon offering to lower your rate.
Well,
That's like-
competition is wonderful.
Right, I mean,
And
because
they
that's what they do.
Spectrum will
Yeah.
get in the game. But what I'm hoping is that if this moves quickly enough, that by the time some of that federal money is released in 2000, whatever you said, 4, 5,
24 or 5, yeah. Mhm.
there might be some options for getting the fiber to the rest of the roads.
There may be, well, I think what Frontier is doing is that they know that they're the only player here that can actually string fiber right now, and they don't have to wait for the money.
Right,
It's like they don't need a partner to do what they're doing. And I think their attitude is once this money starts to actually get available, if they feel they actually have a presence in these towns, even if it's not the whole town, they're gonna be in a better
smart.
position.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. for them.
It is. Plus, I'll hop back to the federal thing and then I'll stop talking. The other thing that's happening is with part of the Infrastructure Act and whatever is that the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, has been tasked with creating new broadband maps for the entire country on a state by state basis. We are almost finished with the mapping in Connecticut. Some states have already finished. The difference is that now these FCC maps that we have had in the past were notoriously inaccurate, and the providers use them to their that inaccuracy to their advantage. The new maps, the fundamental difference is that the providers themselves have to provide the information to the FCC as to, okay, here's where Spectrum has to say, here are the homes we cover in this town, and here is the level of service that they're getting.
That's useful.
Yeah, that they didn't have to do that before. And they could say the areas that they covered, and they didn't have to tell them what level of service. So now they have to be like more specific. And the best part is that that is a totally searchable database once it gets posted. And an individual homeowner can go on and type in their address and say, oh, well, Spectrum says that they're supplying me with blah, blah, blah service. And you can just do a speed test on your computer. And if you're not getting what they're saying, you can report them right then and there, right on the site. And then they have to adjust the reporting. So what will happen is that many of our towns, and Washington's a classic example, right, as the state of play right now. The FCC considers this town 100% served because we have Spectrum internet. When the new maps come online and the new definition of what broadband is comes online, pretty much all of us are going to go from served to underserved. Because although we'll have
Right.
internet service through Spectrum, the new definition of what the FCC will classify as broadband service, Spectrum can't meet right now. And they can't meet it tomorrow, they can't meet it next year, they'll probably never be able to meet it. Unless they switch over to fiber, which of course Spectrum has said they're not going to do. So Frontier obviously knows this.
Yeah.
And when these new maps and these new requirements hit, the cable companies are gonna be, and the reason we haven't seen these maps yet is that the cable industry is lobbying frantically in Washington, DC and pleading with the FCC not to release these maps yet. Because they know what's going to happen. And it's going to be a mess. And I'm sure that Frontier is looking at this and going, whoa, all we're doing is fiber. They know, Frontier knows they're gonna meet the definition, whatever the definition is. So
this has been a lot of development. This must feel almost mind-blowing to you after all those years of Northwest Connect working on and like beating down the door, like trying to get people to see that this is an issue.
yeah, I mean, I think that I guess the one surprise for me is actually that Frontier finally got their act together. I mean, Frontier could have done this 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever. I don't think they've owned SNET for 10 years. It's
I
like,
don't know, yeah.
but you know, they could have done this a long time ago. They had the technology, they had the know-how, they knew where this was going, but they were Frontier. You know, they you know, it's the company that couldn't shoot straight, you know, and you know, went through like the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history, and you know, and they still didn't get everything they wanted out of that, but they got a lot. I mean, they wrote off $10 billion in bad debt.
Well, so I hope that they've had some management changes.
They
That
have
they can actually follow through on.
They have an entirely new team.
Yeah.
And of course, and then they had the black eyes that the team that drove them into the bankruptcy ditch, of course, all got golden handshakes that got reported. And it was like, you know, some guy got like a $23 million, that the CEO, you know, who took him into bankruptcy got like a $23 million golden handshake. And I'm like, you know, you get $23 million for driving the largest telephone company in the United States into a ditch. It's like, you know, really? I mean,
In America.
right, and so, but they have a new team and they have a plan. But you know, they're still Frontier in some ways. So I think you said, you know, let's wait and see. That would be my counsel as well, because you know, the bad part about Frontier is still saddled with $7 billion in debt that they couldn't write off in bankruptcy. And more importantly, they're still burdened with their legacy contracts with Communication Workers of America. You know, they have, you know, they wanted to get out of their collective bargaining agreements, whatever, with all their unions in the bankruptcy filing, and the judge said no. Because the judge said you aren't gonna write your fiscal ship on the backs of your workers. And which was, I think, the right decision, but they still have, even with those disadvantages, they still have a competitive advantage in terms of building out infrastructure, just because they're already here. Their lines are already everywhere.
So I guess the thing to do is to watch and to think about what we need to do as a town to position ourselves as favorably as possible to either have Frontier come and do as much as we can get for free, or be ready for when that that state and federal money comes through the pipeline, that we're, you know, in line. You know, so that I don't know what will be required for that. And if the FCC's maps are coming out, we might not need to do the surveying and the public stuff that we thought we needed to do.
Maybe not. It'll be, I think, I'll be interested to read what they sent Jim, but I mean, obviously they're going to be putting fiber here somewhere. And my hunch is they're probably going to be doing it soon. And what I mean by soon is, I mean, in 2023. You know, a year from now, I think there are going to be some places here in Washington that will have access to fiber.
Amazing.
I can't, I mean, it's
Sorry,
still too
it's exciting.
early for me to tell you. Is it half the town? Is it a quarter of the town? Is it three?
No.
I can't tell you that right now.
All right, well, thank you, Wayne. It's exciting, and thank you, Jim, for sharing that letter with us. We'll follow up and see where that ends up, and we'll keep everyone
Yeah.
posted.
Well, my next move was going to be down to Jim's office to ask him if he had heard from any, you know, and it was like, so.
How
He
fortuitous.
he stole my thunder. So,
Yeah. All right. Does anyone have any other questions or about the broadband? It's a lot of information. Thank you. Let's before we lose anyone else, take care of the calendar business. The meetings for next week, for next year, set on the third Tuesday of every month, just as they were for this year. I went through the calendar. It doesn't look like there are any holiday conflicts. I will be out of town in April though, so I didn't know if, for the April meeting, I didn't know if we wanted to in advance move it to the following week or skip it, or if you want to meet without me. All options, so I figured we could at least discuss that now before we adopt the calendar. Any thoughts?
Can we move it?
Yeah, we can set it for whatever works. The following Tuesday, the fourth Tuesday would be the 25th.
that's fine. It doesn't conflict with any other meetings.
No,
Okay.
nobody meets at 3 o'clock on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Which is nice. I mean, housing is the second Tuesday and EDC is the third Tuesday. Not at exactly the same
Well,
time,
then
but
let's-
so the fourth Tuesday is open.
Well, let's push it to the 25th and just call it good.
All right, so we will move that one to the 25th and all the rest
Okay.
stay the same.
I
Okay,
move we accept the calendar as amended.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
second,
Trisha, thank you. All right, all in favor?
I,
All right, great. So we have the calendar for next year. Good. Fran is still with us. Jim's with Jim. I see you've got your mic on. You want to give us some updates?
Yeah, just the only thing I wanted to report is about an hour or so ago, I've got the final recommendations from the ARPA committee. And I forwarded those to the Board of Selectmen, so I don't think we've got a pretty full agenda Thursday, but we'll be taking it up, and it was roughly $600,000 worth of grants that they had recommended, so we'll go through the process, you know, the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, the auditor, and then town meeting.
Okay.
And
Board of
that's-
Selectmen, Board of Finance, town meeting. Great. So are the ones, just out of curiosity on the process here, anything that they did not forward to the Board of Selectmen, is the Board of Selectmen considering? Or are you only taking what they moved forward?
Yeah, we're just taking what that committee has moved forward. That was sort of their charge, was they did all the heavy lifting relative to, does it comply? Does it fit the mission of ARPA? Does it fit, you know, that kind of thing? Is it, you know, there were some things they had for-profit businesses, they had out-of-town organizations. But I know they put a lot of work into it, quite a few meetings, I think 7 or 8 over the last several months. So they did a pretty comprehensive job.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. And so that's going to be on the agenda for this Thursday?
No, I don't think it will, Michelle. We've got a pretty full agenda.
Yeah, I was gonna say, oh, Thursday.
End of the
would be
year.
perfect. I know. That's not, because I would love to attend that, but I don't know about this Thursday. Anyway, good. Well, so just let us know when that'll be on the agenda, and thanks. Anything else you want to report on from the selectmen?
No, that was about it, I think. And Wayne, I'll get you all that information from Frontier.
Excellent.
Great.
And Fran, I'm so glad you're here. Anything you want to share from the WBA?
I mean, this isn't just the WBA, but Holiday in the Depot was a fantastic success. I mean, it was extremely well intended. People were happy to be out, and I think Jennifer made some meaningful changes to the structure of the way it was put together that I think worked from everything that I could see. But kudos to everyone who worked on it, and it was great. And then I
Yeah.
don't know whether you talked about the, I think you talked about the photo contest at the beginning, right? So you've already covered that.
All right, great. I just want to mention for the Holiday in the Depot, I saw on Instagram, Litchfield Magazine put together a really nice video montage of the evening, of which then was shared by Explore Washington. And they did a great job. I mean, it just, you know, hit a bunch of the different areas, people having fun, seeing all the lights. It was great. So a nice little recap of the evening if you weren't able to attend. I forwarded it to one of my children. She said, wow, it makes Washington look amazing. It is amazing. But yeah, so you should check that out. I wonder if there's a way for me to grab that video or share, or have it somewhere on Explore. It'd be
You could
pretty
probably
neat.
ask Mary Beth for it.
Yeah, well, and because it was on social media and then we shared, you know, I wonder if there's a play, you know, under holidays, you know, some kind of listing where you could just have a link to a video or something. I don't know, but it was really well done. So, yeah, I'm trying to think. Well, I emailed today with Lisa and Amanda about rescheduling the WBA workshop for January that we were going to do in October, and it was just or November, but with the holidays and the Harvest Fest, it was just too much. So we're going to reschedule that for October. And at that workshop, Julia is going to present a little top 10 things you can do free for marketing your business using Explore and other avenues. And Jim and I are also going to be there to answer questions about, you know, the town and the relationship with the businesses and what we can do for the businesses. So I'll let you know when that gets rescheduled. I'm looking at, I think maybe the last week of January, but I have to confirm with everybody.
Is there going to be another Washington Gives thing?
That is a good question. I don't know. Washington Gives is a challenge for me, only because it comes 2 weeks into the new year. And so if we're really going to do something, I need to be working on it now. It was also driven a lot by Julie King and the Chippewa senior projects, and Julie's youngest child graduated last year.
What is Washington Gives? What is that?
So Washington Gives was a day on Martin Luther King Day, which is supposed to be a day of giving, of day of service. It was started kind of, I think it was the Frederick Gun School reached out to the WBA, and then the WBA kind of took it over, and then it morphed it. So it's kind of had several iterations, and then the year I did the 2020 year, because of COVID, it was all online, and it was a combo of all of our nonprofits presenting who they were and the volunteer opportunities they had, and then some of the Chippewa senior projects that were service oriented. So it's had several different, sometimes there were things on site at Judy Black that people could come and do, writing letters, doing projects. The students were involved. It's hard to do volunteer projects January 15th. It's usually icy and cold out, so it's hard to put students to work.
Yeah.
They do it on Juneteenth.
What?
Juneteenth.
Right. Yeah, so it's a great question. I should reach out at least up to Chippewa to see if they want to do something with the Chippewa, the service-oriented senior projects, if nothing else.
It was also something that the gunnery had done, or Frederick Gunn, I'm sorry, had done previously in terms of reaching out to other communities. And the first year, which I think probably was the most successful. I mean, there was a clothing drive. There were activities that occurred in some of the businesses as well as Judy Black and at the town hall. But then COVID did hit, and that obviously caused a lot of problems. But then there was one year that the temperature, I think, was in the teens. on January 15th. So that also made it very hard for things to happen.
Can we move it to another month that's more conducive to that?
It was tied in specifically to the
Oh.
theme of Martin Luther King
Yeah,
and his message. I mean, something could be done in another month, but I think it would need to have a different theme. I mean, it would have to have a different origin.
Sure, okay.
There's a whole marketing sort of component that the
Nationally.
national,
Oh, okay.
the Martin Luther King Foundation, you know, they provided artwork and everything, and we have yard signs. I still have them. We reuse them each year for Washington Gives, and they were just, each year it was a little different. Yeah, some years there was a food drive, some years it was clothing drive. A couple years it was service-oriented projects that students did. The one year it was all online. It was more about learning how to volunteer in our town. We had really nice presentations from Steep Rock and the ambulance and a couple other organizations. So
Wow.
yeah, it is great.
I mean, if it were to be considered for 2024, the planning for it really should begin in October. So it might be something to put on the October agenda
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
think about. And I mean, it was a wonderful activity. And I think that there was one year where the town volunteers were, and I think Julie King organized this, the town volunteers were all recognized. And there was this enormous group picture that took place at Judy Black.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great year. I worked with her on that one too. And we had in town hall, I think that was 2019. The quotes, you know, we did a survey of why you like to volunteer. We had the quotes around, and we had the students made buttons to give to the volunteers and a certificate. Yeah, it was really nice. So we were honoring those who do volunteer in town, because we have so many volunteers, whether it's on the commissions or on all the various nonprofits. So yeah, I forgot that was 2019. So thank you. Yeah, you're right, Fran. We would need to start planning in October for that. And what's the challenge is that there's really no one person that has head of it. And so each year it's been a little bit different, and then kind of piece it together. So yeah, so I'll reach out to those who've been involved in the past, and we can maybe talk about it. I wonder if there's a small way to acknowledge it, to the day this year. We'll think about that. Like,
Well,
today.
certainly in the selectmen's letter.
I mean, it wouldn't take that much to organize a quick food drive or something for Washington Gives. We could just throw out some signs and have a central drop off. So if that's of interest to people, I'd be happy to do something small and quick to at least acknowledge the day.
Yeah.
It also might be a time to highlight the Washington Community Fund and its fuel bank, because that's certainly going to be a big need this year.
That's a great idea, Fran. Fund and fuel fund. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk. And yeah, maybe get something quick together in the first 2 weeks of January. All right. No other business.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you, Wayne. Do I have a second? Or 20? Not too
Merry
bad.
Christmas, everyone.
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas. Thank you all for staying so long on a almost holiday.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Right, so let's stop.